Right now, you might be thinking what I'm feeling. That's a big bedroll, but I'm gonna need it. In this video, it's gonna get cold. I'll be spending the night in a frozen hole, choking on smoke, running my winter moccasins through the ringer, and spending a lot of time reflecting on my own ancestral ties to experiences like this one. In 1755, 18-year-old Pennsylvania colonist James Smith was cutting the road for Major General Edward Braddock's campaign to take Fort Duquesne from the French. Smith was captured by the Delaware before Braddock's defeat, which likely saved his life, and he ended up living among the Caughnawaga sept of the Mohawk in Ohio for 4 years. Smith was deep enough in the American interior that he was sometimes allowed to range out around camp to hunt or trap. As I tramp around this snowy Ohio landscape looking for shelter, I'm reminded of one winter evening when Smith was following raccoon tracks and lost his party. I could see their tracks, but the snow was only about 3 inches deep with a crust upon it, and the present driving snow soon filled up the tracks. As I had only a bow, arrows, and tomahawk with me, and no way to strike fire, I was in a dismal situation. The air was dark with snow, and I had little more prospect of steering my course than I would in the night. At length I came upon a hollow tree with a hole at one side that I could go in at. I went in and found that it was a dry place. The hollow was about 3 feet in diameter and high enough for me to stand in. There was also a considerable quantity of soft, dry, rotten wood around this hollow. I concluded that I would lodge here and would go to work and stop up the doorway of my house. Smith used that dry, rotted wood like mulch. He made a big heap of it at the bottom of that tree to keep him up off the frozen ground, and he stopped up the holes in the tree as best he could with branches. Once he crawled in for the night, he pulled a log into his entrance to seal himself in, wrapped up in his blanket, and he records being reasonably comfortable, falling asleep in his little wooden cave to a raging storm outside. Smith wakes up in complete darkness, but figuring it must be morning, tries to get out. But he's frozen in. Smith says, "I felt terrified. Among all the hardships I had sustained, I had never known before what it was to be thus deprived of light. I went straight away to bed, again wrapping my blanket round me, and lay and mused for a while, and then prayed to Almighty God to direct and protect me as he had done heretofore. I once again attempted to move away the block. My effort proved successful. It moved about 9 inches. A considerable quantity of snow fell in from above, and I immediately received light. I found a very great snow had fallen above what I had ever seen in one night. I was so happy at obtaining the light that all my other difficulties seemed to vanish. I belted my blanket about me, got my tomahawk, bow, and arrows, and went out of my den." Smith makes it back to camp, earning the respect of his captors. Eventually he escapes his captivity, returns to colonial society, fights in the Revolution, and lives out his older years putting the finishing touches on the memoir containing this story. I'm sure in all his musings about that morning sealed in a dark tree, Smith never anticipated a kid roving around the Ohio woods in 2024 trying to relive the same experience. But that's where my mind is at right now. I desperately want to find a tree to sleep in. After caching my gear and wandering the woods for about an hour, I've found 4 potential spots for shelter. 2 fallen trees, a hole, and an open tree trunk. It really would be awesome to spend the night in that fallen tree trunk there, but that great big upright branch that's still hanging is just hanging by a thread. It's cold out, things covered in snow, it's got a lot more weight on it than it normally would. Frankly, I'm scared of that wrenching off while I'm down in that hole and just absolutely crushing me. Completely unnecessary risk. As badly as I want to stay in a tree, the hole at the base of a tree is my next best option. So I retrace my steps and start to settle in. Well, this here is going to be home for the night. This is a great big root ball that got torn up out of the ground when this tree toppled over. Left a pretty good space down in there. I'm going to have to get in there with my axe and clear out some of those roots, but it's going to be a nice warm little burrow for the night. There's 2 behaviors that I wanted to note just real quick. You can notice I got one mitten on. That's because this is my gun hand. This keeps that hand warm against that cold metal gun barrel. And second, this blanket here I've been keeping wrapped up about like this. Keeps my neck warm, that upper part of your core. This is where a lot of that heat will push up out of your body if you don't contain it. And so depending on where you secure this blanket, you can loosen that to let some of that heat vent when you start to heat up when you're on the trail. And then you can tighten that right back up again and pin it. Now the way I'm pinning this, is not with a blanket pin. Those are more Celtic, more European. They don't appear in America during the 18th century. What I've got instead is my toe worm, the cleaning implement that goes on the end of your ramrod for your rifle. I take that toe worm here and I just twist that right through all 4 layers of blanket that I got going right here up at the neck. That goes right through, and you just twist it right back out when you're finished. That's a rock solid way to secure this thing. Frankly, it's faster than messing with that blanket pin, having to poke it through those layers. It leaves a lot less of an impact on your blanket too. And these are nice blankets. This is good wool that I got on. These blankets are hand woven, done by a gentleman named Rob Stone. And these mittens, this hat, and the socks that I'm wearing are all 100% wool, hand knit from Period Patterns by South Union Mills. A keen historical eye might notice that this axe isn't right for the time period. This camp actually motivated me to go and buy an accurate one with a better head pattern and a straight handle. Usually if I don't have proper gear, I don't fold in modern equivalents. I just make do without. But nobody in the 18th century would have intentionally left for a winter overnighter without an axe. It would have been considered highly unsafe. You've got to have a way to make wood. You'll get to see my new axe in future videos. I'm out of the wind, that's for certain. And a little more structure, a little more cover around this opening here, and I'll really be pretty comfortable tonight. So I'm excited. I've gotten pretty warm working, especially because I've been out of the wind. And so I'm gonna stop, take a break, let that body temperature cool just a little bit. You really don't want to start to sweat, because then you are wet and it's right up against your skin. Your clothes get wet, you'll be miserable. So keep sweat to a minimum at all costs. I got this piece of bread here. I'm gonna have a little bit of a lunchtime kind of snack, and then we'll get to finishing up this shelter. We'll make some wood for tonight so I can stay warm. Right now I'm thinking a little fire right about here would that would do real well. Well, I got quite a bit done. Unfortunately burned a little bit of daylight doing it, but removed a lot of soil from this area here and used it as fill for this area over my right shoulder behind me. There was some air moving through there, I found, once I was down in here. So I took the tree bark off from the outside of my shelter, put it right there to try and jam up that airflow, and I dug out a little area where I can have a fire. Unfortunately, I burned a little daylight doing those 3 tasks, and so now I'm gonna get enough wood together to have a nice fire here so that I can drink something warm before I go to bed, bring that core temperature up, and then I'll take the hot rocks out of that fire. I think I'm gonna sit on top of one, is this flat heart-shaped rock. I think I'll sit right on top of that and let that heat come right up through all my bedding. And then I've got another smaller one that I'll just put right against my chest. I think I'm gonna be pretty comfortable. Well, I'm walking down this drainage here, headed down to the creek where I can drink a little bit of water. Instead of bringing a canteen, which I knew was just gonna freeze anyways. And as mentor Nathan Kobuck has pointed out, I don't think a whole lot of guys were running around with canteens, probably just drinking right out of the water, or else boiling it and then drinking it, maybe carrying a pocket bottle with some water. But most of the time drinking directly from the source, and because they were following waterways, that would have been pretty common. So I got my life straw in my pocket. So far that's worked really well for me. I did it on a 10-mile hike in winter moccasins. That got me through just fine. I was so thirsty, I might have just drank about a quart of water, and that is so cold. I felt my entire body temperature just plummet. So I'm making tracks now. I'm getting back to camp. Time to make some wood, and then I'll be hunkering down into my camp pretty soon. It's about 16 degrees, and it is windy and cold. That was some work. I'm gonna organize all that wood and then move my stuff in there, and by then the sun might be down. So I've pretty much filled every single available spot inside my shelter with wood. It's gonna be a tight squeeze, and that's what you want. It's really, really hard to warm up the air around you if you're in a big shelter. It's a lesson that I learned very well in a previous winter video where I made a lean-to that you probably could have bunked 8 people inside of. This, I think, is really the perfect size shelter for me. Yep, here we go, here we go. Some of this wood is a little damp. I knew that going into this, so got my candle out. I'm gonna use the candle as a constant source of heat to help this wood catch despite the moisture. It is cold. It is real cold. Overall, this is a pretty good setup. Funny though that I think this tree fell maybe because of the weight of some snow that was on it. Not really sure, but it fell during the winter time, and I think this soil was frozen at the time that it fell, because now that it's thawing, it keeps on just raining down on me, which is really uncomfortable because I'm getting cold dirt flowing down my down the back of my neck as it falls into my collar. Still makes a good shelter, better than sitting out at the base of some tree.
After about 30 minutes of warming up and thinking about the discomforts of this camp, my mind settled on my great-uncle Elmer. He, too, spent time in a miserable frozen hole, though in far worse conditions. Several times I sat back and tried to tell the story for the camera, but in post-production I decided it would be better heard, and hereby preserved, coming from my grandpa.
He was in charge of 6 tanks, Army tanks, in the Korean War, and they would go down in the hill there in the mountains and go through that little round hole under the tank, and they had it burrowed to go way down in the hill there, way down in the hill, and then they had it burrowed out pretty big, maybe about 100 by 50 or whatever, and they had little campfires down there, and they had a barrel of gas that would drip with a pipe, would drip gas into that little campfire, and that's how they kept warm way down in the hill. And they had to do that about every night for maybe 5 months.
When you consider the hardship that my recent ancestors have endured to put me in this position to be able to enjoy this hardship as leisure, it begs the question, what will you do in your lifetime to further that legacy, to position your own children in an even better spot than you've been given? And those are the kind of somber campfire thoughts that come to mind when I'm out in the woods doing something like this. Well, this hot chocolate's been done for a long time. It smells fantastic. I'm all nestled into the bedroll here. Just got my upper body poking out. I'm gonna sip on that hot chocolate and then burrow into this the rest of the way. And I'll see you in the morning.
I am so warm. I'm gonna do it. Woo! It's cold. Wow. That was awesome. That was pretty cool. It was a good night in here. I really don't want to get up and get out of bed, but that's going to be the next step. Fortunately, the wool stuffers that go down inside my moccasins for added insulation and padding, I tucked those into my bedroll
sat on top of them all night. So my tailbone, I was about in the sitting up position when I leaned my back against the wall. I was about in the same position all night. So having something good thick padding, something warm to sit on went a long way. So I got a couple of sets of those in here that I will be tucking around my feet as I slip into these moccasins. Now, I should have sat on top of the moccasins as well, because these are stiff. Now they're oiled so they don't freeze up, but they are stiff.
These winter moccasins are real simple. They're just oversized pucker toe mocks. As you can see, for insulation, I first wear knee-high hand-knit wool socks from South Union Mills. Around those socks, I wrap 2 or 3 pieces, about 12 by 12 inches, of wool. These are just squares cut out of an old blanket. And you kind of have to hold that whole package together while you jam your foot into the moccasin. And once you've got the moccasin on around it all, lace them up as tight as you can bear, because all that wool is going to start to compress and loosen a lot as you move. If you carry a few extra wool pieces for each foot, then you can swap them throughout the day.
You can't stay warm in the wintertime with all this. There's something wrong.
So you can replace the innermost squares of wool if you start to sweat, or you can replace the outermost ones if moisture starts to permeate the seams of your moccasins. You might not be able to make completely waterproof moccasins, but you can at least mitigate the effects as that water starts to creep in. That said, my moccasins are dipped in a hot mix of beeswax, tallow, and turpentine. It's an 18th century waterproofer from the Woods Runner blog that I'll link down below in the video description. I'll also be publishing a complete winter moccasin DIY video soon, so please keep an eye out for that. Start your comment with the word moccasin so I know that you watched to the end, and as always, I welcome your feedback. Thank you very much for watching.